Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I think we'll get started now. It looks like the numbers are starting to settle in a little bit. I just wanted to welcome all of you to this panel discussion and introduce myself. My name is Mary Wells. I feel so proud and privileged to be the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Waterloo. And I just want to say good afternoon to our alumni, our students, our staff, our faculty, our friends, and our community members. Welcome to today's very interesting and topical session of the Alumni Speaker Series. Today, our panel of experts from academia and industry are looking at the timely and somewhat controversial issue of the 5th generation of technology for cellular networks, also known as 5G. They will discuss how 5G is poised to change the way we connect and communicate, how we connect with other humans, with machines, and how machines communicate with each other. In today's session, these experts will talk about the applications, the technology, as well as how trillions of devices will be able to connect in new ways and how 5G will be applied practically, including how it will help narrow the digital divide that has become even more apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's session is being moderated by Professor Catherine Rosenberg. She's a professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, a Canada Research Chair in the Future Internet, and Cisco Research Chair in 5G Systems. And I'm so proud to have her as one of the faculty members within Waterloo Engineering. Catherine started her career at Alcatel in France and then worked at AT&T Bell Lab in the USA. From 1988 to 1996, she was a faculty member in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at École Polytechnique in Montreal. In 1996, she joined Natale Networks in the UK, where she created and headed the R&D department in broadband satellite networking. In 1999, Dr. Rosenberg became a professor in the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Purdue University, where she co-founded the Center for Wireless Systems and Applications. She then joined the University of Waterloo in 2004, and we were so proud and pleased to welcome her as a faculty member then. Thank you, Catherine, for moderating today's session. As always, we welcome your questions and we'll answer as many as we can in this session. I know I am so excited about learning more about 5G and how it will reshape our future and our interactions with each other. Catherine, I'll now pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks a lot for the nice introduction. And welcome to everyone, to the participant and to the panelists. Before introducing the panelists, I'm going to cover a few housekeeping items. First, today's session is being recorded and will be available on YouTube for viewing. Second, there is a link to the recording, or let's put it that way, the link for the recording will be sent to all the participants once it is available. And also, please submit all your questions through the Q&A section in Zoom, and we will answer as many as we can during the event. So let me now introduce the panelists. Our first panelist is Joe Natale. Joe Natale, can you please make a little, yes, hi Joe. So Joe joined Rogers as President and Chief Executive Officer in April 2017. Previously, Joe was at TELUS Corporation from 2003 to 2015, where he held a number of senior positions, including President and CEO. Prior to 2003, Mr. Natale held successive senior leadership positions at and managing partner roles within KPMG in Canada and globally. He joined KPMG after it acquired the consulting company he co-founded in 1997. Mr. Natale serves on the board of the Hospital for Sick Children, and of course, we are very, very, very proud to have Mr. Natale hold a BASc in Electrical Engineering from the University of Waterloo. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Catherine.
The second panelist is Amir Khajepour, who is a professor in the University of Waterloo. He's a professor of mechanical and mechatronics engineering. He holds the Tier 1 Canada Research Chairs in Mechatronics Vehicle System and Senior NSERC General Motors Industrial Research Chair in Holistic Vehicle Control. I love this, Holistic Vehicle Control. His research has resulted in over 28 patents, several technology transfers and startup companies. He's a recipient of the Engineering Medal from the Professional Engineering Ontario, a fellow of the Engineering Institute of Canada, the American Society of Mechanical Engineering, and the Canadian Society of Mechanical Engineering. So Amir, welcome.
Thank you.
And our third panelist is Anuj Kapur. Anuj is a president and corporate development and strategy at SAP. He's based in Palo Alto, where the weather is probably much better than in Waterloo. Anuj works alongside SAP's executive board to drive the company's strategic and product direction. Anuj was previously the chief strategy officer at Cisco. He has an MBA from Wharton and a BASc in electrical engineering from the University of Waterloo. Welcome, Anuj.
Thank you, Catherine.
So I'm going to set the stage very quickly about 5G, and then we are going to start our session and by asking questions to the panelists. So I assume that people don't know necessarily a lot about 5G. So as Mary said very well, the G of 5G is generation, and we are in the 5th generation. There is about one generation every 10 years. So the first generation called 1G was in 1981. Now we are really in the 4G and the 5th generation is coming up. And this 5G generation, or this 5G system is very exciting because it's going to offer services that we never had before. So 5G is going to do things that 4G does much better, more efficiently, much faster for a much larger number of people, but it's going to also offer other services. And in fact, it's going to offer a service called ultra reliable low latency communication. It's the first time a cellular network is promising anything with respect to latency. So it's it's going to be a great achievement. It's going to be very, very helpful for some applications, but I won't tell you much about application at this point, since the panelists will tell you quite a lot about that. And the third service is going to be really the global IoT, global Internet of Things. Again, something that has just started a little bit with 4G, but which is going to become a major service in 5G. So 5G is offering 3 services. One, which is called Enhanced Mobile Broadband, which is really the continuation of 4G LTE. Another one on ultra reliable low latency, and a third one on global IoT called massive machine type communication. We will also see that 5G might be used to connect your home and not only yourself through your smartphone. And that's something which is very exciting. It's not part of the services that were envisaged immediately, but it might be the first big success of 5G. It's connectivity to how to help connect your home very quickly and with a very easy deployment. So in a nutshell, 5G is faster data transfer rate, reduced latency, and massive device connectivity. So all of you know very well that Waterloo is a technology university. So as you can imagine, we can talk about technology a lot, and I'm going to do that very, very quickly. And after that, we'll talk about application, and I will ask the panelists to tell me more about application. So if you think of 5G, we are going to try to meet different requirements. We want to be able to offer very low rate to sensors, very high rate to your smartphone or to your computer. We want to offer better quality of experience. We want to offer better security, better energy consumption. And the technologies, the flag carrier of technologies are massive MIMO, millimeter wave, beamforming, softwareization of the core, slicing, use of the cloud. All those words are buzzwords. We can spend time discussing them if you are interested, but I'm not completely sure that you are interested in the technology. I suspect you are more interested in the application. And now it's time to ask the panelists first if they want to add anything to my description of 5G. And after that, we'll go into the question. Anyone want to say something more about my description on 5G? No, you are
I thought
fine?
it was great. I thought it was great, Catherine.
Thank
Very
you.
well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then in that case, I'm going to start with my first question. And my first question is for Anuj. And Anuj, you are muted right now. Yeah. So at the start of any new generation in a wireless cellular network, there is always the question of the application and use case. What can we look forward to in 5G?
Yeah, Catherine, I think it's a very appropriate question. And I think what's been true across every generation of wireless is three things. One, it always takes longer to actually get to mass market adoption. If you look at the stats coming out of the GSMA, they expect that about 22% of all devices in 2025 will be 5G enabled. So the vast majority of connections to cellular environments will still continue to be LTE and in some cases 3G. The second is that the applications that we all look forward to are typically not obvious at the time that the technology is created. Look at the most iconic applications that we associate with LTE, Uber, navigation, even things like Clubhouse. They only come around once you have widespread connectivity, and the benefits of that connectivity can be accrued into solving a real problem that people didn't believe they had, or they believed they had, but it was actually just better solved. And the third thing is that, typically consumer expectations tend to be ahead of the ability of the technology and the service providers to be able to relate to it. I remember I was driving down 101, Highway 101 in the Valley in 1999, and there was a billboard from a company called phone.com. Some of you may remember that. And they said, the best of the internet now on your phone. And if you recall the devices back in 1999 from Nokia or Motorola or even from BlackBerry, they were effectively 8 characters wide, 3 rows down. If that is the best of the internet now on your phone, you can imagine that some chief marketing officer got ahead of the reality. So I think what we can absolutely look forward to is some of the things that you mentioned, which is the types of applications enabled by low latency communications, the types of applications enabled by ultra broadband, enhanced mobile broadband. And I think it'll come down to a couple of categories, which is fixed devices that exist right now that require connectivity, think traffic lights, emerging mobile devices that may be created as a result of this, think drones or delivery robots, and then obviously consumer applications that are extended as a result of the fact that we have low latency communication and ubiquitous connectivity. So think things like augmented reality. But I think it'll be a while for those to start to become real.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuj. Joe, Amir, do you want to add anything to?
Again, I think when we think about the transportation, which is something that I do, and vehicles, I really think that vehicles transportation is going through a revolution. And I guess that revolution is something that we maybe haven't seen since Ford introduced the mass production of vehicles. And I think information is the key to what is happening now. And having access to real-time information is making everything that now we are dreaming or thinking could happen. So I think this 5G and be able to access to any type of information at any time is going to, again, help to transform the transportation, mobility, and vehicles to completely something new. And I guess that we have seen some, but I guess having this 5G and the availability of the information at any time with the minimum latency at any speed, I guess that will revolutionize the whole transportation and vehicle systems.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I think I can, of course, completely agree with what Anuj and Amir have been saying. I would say as well that each G has brought a new currency to the application and use case world. And 5G is sort of the most abundant yet in terms of the currency that brings. It's not just the enhancement of broadband capability from 4G, which was the currency of 4G, but latency as a currency, ultra reliability and quality of service as a currency, what it enables in terms of network slicing as a currency, and therefore creating, bespoke environments for certain applications. I think as a result, like there's not one part of society or one part of business or industry that will say, well, there's nothing in it for us in 5G. 5G is the first time where I think there's an industrial application for almost every part of B2B and certainly a multitude of consumer applications. And I agree with Anuj's comment that it's hard to predict what they all are right now, but if we put the currencies out there, and we put the right innovation around it, it's amazing what will happen. No different than 4G. 4G, we all said, what are we going to do with all that bandwidth? What will we possibly do with it? And then along came all the applications as great, talented minds started to innovate with that currency.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think we are creating the enabling technologies, and we let others invent the application that will go on this technology. So we are really enablers. And we have seen the great success of 4G and 5G indeed. I think for me, the IoT, the global IoT is quite a potential revolution, because IoT is not new to the world, but what is new is to think global,
Right.
to think of supply chain, to think of how sensors are going to be mobile and how it's going to impact industry as well as our own home and our own life. And maybe just to put in terms of application, you have been a little bit shy to indeed look at the crystal ball, and I understand, because we are always wrong when we do that. But we can think in terms of augmented reality, in terms of virtual reality, in terms of remote surgery, and all those kind of things will greatly benefit from low latency application. So, Joe, my question to you is, how does Rogers play a role in 5G in Canada?
Canada is a huge country, and at every G, there's been an inflection point. This is the biggest inflection point of all in terms of the investment cycle ahead. And one thing we've learned through COVID is that more than ever, connectivity is a critical part of everyday life. I think with 5G, that'll be an even more sort of almost geometric conclusion that people will draw as this all comes to life. And it's getting going. It's getting going quickly on 5G. The race for 5G is not really within Rogers and the competitors in Canada. The race for 5G is with respect to where does Canada sit on a global stage in terms of competitive capability and the innovation that 5G fosters and the ecosystem of capabilities and talent and startup that it fosters. The journey in Canada is just beginning. We were first out with 5G. We've covered about half the country with 5G, 173 cities. We launched a standalone core for 5G, which is really sort of the brains of 5G that will enable a lot of the capabilities that we've talked about, especially around multi-edge computing or the latency capabilities that we've talked about. So our role is, as always, is to invest ahead of the revenue cycle. What's different about 5G is that in 1 through 4G, they were kind of monolithic investments. We're going to invest this over a period of 18 months or 2 years, and then we'll have a brand new capability across Canada. And it's sort of a one and done evolution. Yes, there was sort of 4G and then LTE and LTE advanced, but 5G, I think, will be a series of evolutionary investments over the next many years as we build up more of this capability. We have about 8,000 wireless towers in Canada. Said to my team, that's no longer a wireless tower. That's now a data center. A data center. If we're going to really enable low latency applications, then we have the need for computing power and storage capability at every one of those endpoints. Push that further into the device as well. So our job is really to keep driving the investment, do so on the basis that there is an economic return. Although at the beginning of each G, I would say to you, it's always fuzzy. It's always fuzzy. It's always very hard to understand. And you sort of do it on the basis that it makes sense and that the economics will follow over time. But it's not just about the infrastructure. We have to build the ecosystem around it. And that is, highly skilled jobs and talent capabilities. And one of the reasons that we have a partnership with the University of Waterloo is because we think that's a great place to inspire talent and to look for future talent in the organization and to work on some things that will help bring life to 5G, help, you know, the work that's been done around the autonomous bus capability on the 5G network on campus, or, you know, something as fun as we had a Sportsnet hockey hackathon looking for fan engagement ideas inside the arena or inside watching a hockey game. And so these are all places where we can engage talented people, engage the startup community, and start to build a momentum and understanding around what 5G could be. And I think we have an obligation not just around the investment, but also on the talent side.
Thank you, Joe. The questions are coming up, plenty of questions, so I'll try to pick up a few after. Amir, I'll ask you a question first. You are clearly an expert in transportation, and you have already said that you expect 5G to have a huge impact on transportation. Can you give us an example?
Yes, again, 5G to our campus is relatively new. Again, that came a few months ago. And now it has opened up many new ideas that we are trying to see how we can use it. One of the things that we are doing, we have a large program in autonomous shuttle bus. And we have 5 of them. One of them is fully instrumented, that is operational now in testing level. And one of the things that now we are doing is to see whether we can use teleoperation whenever, again, the vehicle cannot make that decision. Because thinking that, yes, the AI or whatever it is can make all the decision the way that people can do is obviously a little bit wishful at this time. So in those cases, if the vehicle cannot make any decision, then the operator that is sitting somewhere again in the lab or kilometers away can take over the vehicle, drive it, pass, make that decision, and then put it back into automated driving. So that not only increases the level of safety, but at the same time does not block the traffic or anything. The other thing that we are working on is instead of having all the sensors, expensive sensors on each of these shuttle buses, we are putting infrastructure sensors, meaning that each of those can sit on the light post or any other thing, and then from the top, they can see the road. It has a camera, LiDAR, radar, and the edge computer and connectivity to the cloud. And then that way we should be able to actually drive those vehicles through a cloud-based control. So in that case, doesn't matter if you have 1 vehicle or 10 vehicles or 20 vehicles, because the information is the same for all of them. And then the control could come from there. So there are many things that now we have started working on, and some of the question that obviously we have to answer is the latency of 5G is very low as long as you have a good access to it, right? And see this.
Speaking of latency, because I have a very specific question from one of the participants, what does a low latency application mean? It's a good question, I think. The reality, think of a remote surgery, right? You are taking a decision and you want the return from the other side to be very quick. So latency is really when you have a communication with somebody or a control with somebody where the control has, there is basically a closed loop, and you want this closed loop to be very quick. Mm-hmm. So so that's to answer the question. At least I have answered one question on from the participant. There is
on that point, Catherine, we're talking about 5 milliseconds of latency. So the human eye blinks at about 50 milliseconds.
Yes.
And we've been able to achieve with 4G maybe 60, 80 milliseconds. So 5 milliseconds changes everything.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. I think it's a great, you should come and teach at Waterloo. I think your example is much better than mine.
I'm not very good at it. I will try. Only if you do it with me.
Thank you. But so something very, very close to my mind, to my work, in fact, and I have seen 1 or 2 questions on that, is 5G going to increase the digital divide between the rural areas and the urban areas? Or is it going to close the digital divide? So I do research on this topic, and I'm a strong believer that 5G can close the digital divide. But That's my research, so I'm not going to push it. But Joe, I like your opinion. Is internet connectivity an essential service? I suspect,
Yes.
I don't want to answer yes. And can 5G narrow the digital divide that has become even more apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic, and how?
So I think 5G is a step change in our ability to narrow the digital divide. You know, there are about 2 million homes in Canada that are uneconomical to build to, where it would cost anywhere between $20,000 and $100,000 to run an optical fiber connection, or more in some cases. And therefore, they've been left behind. 2 million homes that couldn't participate on this video conference right now. So in a nation as advanced and as forward-thinking in Canada, that's completely unacceptable, especially in terms of the world we're heading into. We can't afford to have that portion of the population or the country uncovered. I'm really excited about the fixed wireless capability that comes with 5G. I mean, we've all experimented with 4G fixed wireless, but it has its limitations in terms of capacity and capability. The dynamic spectrum management capabilities of 5G, I think, will change the game dramatically. You mentioned a few of them earlier, Catherine. Overall, I think it'll really help us to use wireless for the final mile. And so when you take a look at what's happening in rural Canada, a combination of fixed wireless and low Earth orbiting satellite capability could really come together once and for all to connect every Canadian. And having 5G capability in every corner of Canada makes all the applications come to life. I mean, you talked about remote surgery a few minutes ago. Remote surgery requires 5G capability at, you know, all ends of that equation. And think about, you know, this divide, where the divide is deepening. We have people that, you know, are being left behind in terms of education, in terms of telemedicine, in terms of all aspects of where we're going. So we've got to close this divide.
Absolutely. And in fact, just maybe to explain a little bit what we mean by fixed wireless access for those who don't know, is really till now, there was no convergence between the cellular world and the fixed access world, where basically the fixed access world is a world which connects your home to the internet. And really what we are doing with fixed wireless access is to converge two worlds. And why is that a great, as Joe is saying, it's going to be wonderful, because we forget to say that 90% of Canada is covered by 4G today. 95% of
But 95%, 95 to 97% of Canada, depending what you define as 4G as a capability.
Yes, so if you think about it, we already have coverage, wide coverage through 4G. And what we can do if we go from 4G to 5G is have the bandwidth, the rate, the bit rate to offer to homes. And this is going to indeed have a huge impact if we can do it well, which is of course full of research challenges, but that's what is exciting from the perspective of a researcher like me.
I think it also will enable a new work from home modality.
Absolutely.
Right? There's a de-urbanization that I think will come as technology is available outside of the major urban centers. People, you know, that can work from home, depending on what roles they play, they can now live in other parts of Canada that are more affordable, have a different lifestyle, but yet have the technology to connect and be part of the digital economy.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of questions on applications that I see, and I would like to take one, maybe if I can, though also maybe some technical questions, just because we want to show that we are a technical university. So what about 5G? What in 5G enables the low latency? Is it the bandwidth? Is it, what is enabling low latency? So I can answer that, or if Joe or Anuj or Amir want to answer that. Okay, Anuj?
Go ahead, Catherine. Yeah, Anuj.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so what is enabling low latency, as I think Anuj said it and Joe earlier, is by moving, in fact, Joe said it, it's by moving many of the functionalities closer to your home or to your phone. So basically now the base stations are also becoming a part of the cloud, and that is really reducing the latency. And the second thing is something called 5G NR, new radio, which is very sophisticated way to play with the physical layer technology to make sure that no time is wasted. So if you need more information, call me because, or send me a message, because this is quite technical, but I just wanted to make sure that we had at least a beginning of an answer. Let's go to section 2 now. And section 2, Anuj, I have the first question is for you. What is the current status of 5G in the USA? What advances have we made in order to provide security for users and for their device and to create a secure 5G network? Is it any different from LTE or 4G?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an exciting time for the US in 5G. I think some of the participants pointed out the 81 billion that was raised in February, courtesy of Verizon and AT&T and others. So the spectrum auctions for what's known as mid-band or C-band happened. And you really need C-band to be able to actually provide the full benefits of higher throughput, lower latency, and the 10x or 100x increase in the number of connections. So, T-Mobile, I think, has been first to hit the threshold of what's called 100 million POPs, which is, population density covered. They did that earlier this year. They're at 125. Verizon will be next in about 12 months, where they will cover 100 million, and then AT&T will come next. So and then you have Comcast and Dish that are going to be rolling out access in the interim as well. So you will start to see both the device ecosystem and the network footprint, not only in the urban centers, as Joe mentioned, but in the non-urban centers. And I think it's been talked about, it will sort of mirror an inverse T, which is very high dense, very strong coverage in urban centers, and then broad scale coverage using low band frequencies everywhere else. I think security is an interesting one. It's always something that we need to worry about historically, but the good news here is that wireless networks have never really demonstrated themselves as an attractive surface area, and devices haven't really demonstrated themselves as being an attack vector for the vulnerabilities that we commonly sort of associate with cyber incidents. So if you look at sort of the top 50 hacks that have happened, very few have actually exploited some of the ornate benefits that are provided in cellular communications. Now, there's a couple of areas where, for public safety, in case of emergency, there are certain access controls and access provisions that you can compromise a network, but your ability to do that and actually gain economic benefit is generally going to be limited. So the good news is, across all the things that we worked on in LTE, 5G improves upon it in terms of end-to-end encryption, in terms of identity and access control and authorization, and then maintaining privacy of both the user and their location. So generally speaking, I feel fairly comfortable heading into early 5G that things are going to be better than they once were. But again, the surface area just doesn't lend itself to the attack vectors that we've seen. I think some of you in Canada may have seen that Molson Coors production line got compromised. So that's obviously a big issue to the extent you're a fan of their end product. But luckily, that was not tied to a 5G endpoint or a 4G endpoint.
Thank you, Anuj. Anybody else wants to say something about security? No. Anuj, I had promised not to do very difficult question, but at the same time, I'm fascinated by, I'm not sure it's very nice, but I'm fascinated by the problem of lawful intercept in cellular network. And maybe I'll ask Joe, maybe just in case you have something to say about that. How do you feel about lawful intercept in 5G? Do you think it's normal for cellular network to be be regulated in terms of lawful intercept, while Wi-Fi networks don't have the same regulation?
When you say, Catherine, lawful intercept, you mean in terms of disclosure to
Yes.
authorities, in terms of information, et cetera?
Yes, well, not from the point of view of information, but more that you have to put a set of protocol in place so that you can get the information. So I'm not making it.
Yes, yeah, I understand.
Right.
No, we have that as an important item today. We feel we have a responsibility of trust with customers around data and information And we think very seriously about who has access to the cellular network data. And in our world, unless the authorities come with a clearly, certified lawful process, then there's no access to the data or the information. And I feel very strongly about that. We've gone to the Supreme Court of Canada on this point because it's the minute that the data is not managed properly, you lose all trust in the network, and therefore the challenges around the use of that network become even more problematic.
Absolutely. I think there is a very, very privileged relationship between a customer and his or her operator. And this is based on trust, and privacy is a big issue. So, Anuj, would you like to add something to that?
No, I think it's an evolution of historically this being deemed an essential service. And if connectivity, principally voice-based, continues to be that, then I think that requirement will continue to be there. But Joe said it right, which is, I think the custodianship of customer data is a privilege, and one that I think operators have demonstrated over the last 25 years. They've maintained that fine balance.
Thank you. So, Joe, regarding so I have a question for you, but you might have answered part of it. So feel free to move out a little bit
Sure.
if you want to. So what do advancements in 5G mean for Canada? And
yeah, I'm very passionate on this topic, Catherine. I think they mean everything for our future prosperity as a nation. And there was a study done by Bloomberg. Bloomberg publishes an innovation index. They published it, just recently, just before COVID. Canada ranks 21st out of 60 nations in terms of innovation, and I just think that's not good enough. I mean, we've got some of the best universities in the world right here. This is definitely, I think, the very best group that we're speaking to right now. I know I'm biased, but I really believe it creates some of the best innovation, research, and talent out there. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do a better job of commercializing and scaling up the capability on a global level. And I think that's the opportunity ahead of us as we take this next inflection point. There's an opportunity to really become a global leader in some of the key industries that matter. In mining or natural resources, we already are a global leader on many fronts. And there's certainly applications that matter in those industries. We're doing some work right now around private networking, 5G private networking capabilities to drive robotics and automation on a mine site, as an example. But it needs to go beyond just the sort of key industrial areas that matter to Canada. That there's no reason why we couldn't do more in the world of real-time applications for transportation. Given what Amir was talking about earlier, there's no reason why we couldn't do more in terms of smart cities and emergency response in smart cities. I mean, 5G could create a capability that would be world-class in terms of getting paramedics to the scene of an accident with real-time medical data arriving as they're on their way there, with the traffic system in that city completely cooperating with that travel route and that approach as a whole, so that we could save lives. I mean, these are applications that are no longer in the realm of PowerPoint presentation. These are real applications that are being worked on right now. So I think it's really important that we bring together the magic of what is Canada with respect to innovation, investment, technologies, and the requisite infrastructure, ubiquitous 5G capability that's leading edge, because that will create, even better economic prosperity, right? Silicon Valley, where Anuj lives, is a great example of what's possible when industry, government, and academia come together and conspire to create greatness. We've done a good job already in Canada, but the game keeps changing, and we have an opportunity to double down on this capability, frankly.
thank you, Joe. Anuj, Amir, do you want to add something, or do we go to our third section maybe we should go to our third section. So our third section is about research. So the University of Waterloo, for maybe you know, maybe you don't know, was ranked number 6 in the world in telecommunication engineering, 6 in the world. And that was, we were ranked by Shanghai, and that was in 2017. So I don't know, maybe there are more recent ranking, I was not sure, but this one was, I thought, very telling. So indeed, Waterloo and Canada are doing extremely well in telecommunication. Waterloo attracts more ICT funding from NSERC, the Canadian agency, than any other university in Canada. We have more than 50 leading researchers, including 15 Canada researchers, Amir being one of them, and 16 other researchers working in wireless, IoT, or application related to wireless. We have world-class end-to-end research end-to-end research and innovation. We work a lot with industry, with Rogers, with Cisco, and with many other industry. And we create multidisciplinary teams to really accelerate the hardware-software integration for wireless. So this is Waterloo. And since after all, this is a gathering of alumni in particular, it's important for the alumni and for the new students to know what we are doing. So in terms of research, we do everything from devices to communication, to networking, to data, application, security, and also policy, business model, human-computer interaction. So we do everything end-to-end. And that is, I think, quite special to Waterloo. So now, of course, Amir is one of the many experts we have, and one in 5G, and in particular in transportation. And Amir, as you know, we have a 5G, or we are going to have a 5G living lab, thanks to Rogers, on campus. How is it going to impact your research?
I think you very correctly mentioned that 5G is an enabler, right? So there have been many, I guess, ideas and research that we wanted to do. However, just because of that latency that we discussed, or the bandwidth, it wasn't possible to do it easily. And if we wanted to do it, that meant that, yes, we had to have our own network in order to do it. Just think about material delivery, whether inside or outside. Now, without, again, a very high speed, low latency, high bandwidth network, you have to develop your own, or you have to install your own infrastructure in order to have that communication level. But with this, you don't need to be worried about that part. For example, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, right? So with vehicle-to-vehicle communication, the question is, do you still need to direct communication with the vehicle, or you can use the 5G direct communication, right? So I think if we think about what now we will have with the new live lab at Waterloo campus, we can start doing many of these projects and understand exactly what is happening. Although it doesn't mean that there is no difficulties or there is no research component in order to handle this, because we talk about, yes, the bandwidth, we talk about the latency, but we at the same time know that that is going up and down. And then the question is, if the latency switches from 5 to 15, 20, how we are going to deal with it. So these are opening a lot of questions and a lot of opportunities that we have started, I guess, some, again, in my lab, in automotive research, in autonomous driving, in material handling, and many other. And also, as you mentioned, we have a huge number of people working on the same areas. And I think that will help them to use, again, this system without any extra investment on the infrastructure in order to do it.
Thank you, Amir. And I see quite a lot of questions from students saying, how can we get involved in 5G? So I think it's very simple. If you are interested in 5G, contact Amir, contact me, and depending on your real interest, device, application, security, dependability, communication, data, network, will put you in touch with the right person. So please feel free to contact us, and we'll be glad to orient you to the right professor and to the right team. Anuj, how will the post-pandemic remote work affect 5G adoption?
Yeah, I think Joe touched on this, which is, at Cisco, we used to have a saying, which is the internet's your network and the cloud is your data center. And that was pre-COVID. And post-COVID, you're going to have 1.25 billion knowledge workers globally. And for them, work is where they are, no longer in an office, no longer at a home. So I think it really puts in, one of the currencies, Joe, as you mentioned, is ubiquitous broadband access wherever you are on whatever device you need it, at whatever cost points you're willing to actually pay for it. And there will be, I noticed there's a fair number of questions, obviously, around Starlink and OneWeb and satellite-based access. Amazon's got something with Kuiper. So the great thing is, over the next 10 years, whether it's enabled by unlicensed technologies like Wi-Fi, licensed technologies like LTE or 5G standalone, or even satellite-based access, there will be more options for us to connect, to be able to do what we need, whether we're information workers or whether we're workers that need connectivity to actually get through the day. And the post-COVID reality, I think, is just one where access is everywhere in every device. And again, the key will be, as one of the individuals mentioned on the chat, is can you maintain the security and integrity and privacy of that communication link? And can you trust it because the provider is one that you have a trusted relationship with? And I think that will continue to sort of create a pause in terms of wide-scale adoption.
Thank you, Anuj. Before asking my next question, I'm looking at the questions from the participant, and there is one that I find very interesting. Canada has world university graduates, but many of them are hired for work in the USA, including myself, say the person. Can 5G influence this? So would you like to answer this question, Joe, Anuj?
I'll take the first crack at that. My hope, my belief is that 5G can be a catalyst for this. It wasn't long ago that I was sitting as an engineering student at the University of Waterloo and looked out and about at all the great places I might want to work coming out of school. And sadly, today there are so many great places to come out and work, but fewer and fewer of them are in Canada. And we've lost Natale, we've lost what was originally BlackBerry. I think I keep going in terms of the great technology companies. I think with every evolution of technology, there's a catalyst and opportunity to do something new, different, and exciting that creates a global leader, or more than one global leader in Canada. I think 5G has that capability, not just because it'll attract investment dollars. 5G will cost about $26 billion in Canada to deploy. If you look at the network capability required. But if we can marry that with creating the right conditions to create new companies, to attract talent, then we stand a chance of not being the farm team for 5G for large industrial players outside of Canada. We stand the opportunity to be a net importer of talent and capability, as well as continuing with export as well. But to play more than that game. So I think there's a huge opportunity here. It's developing ideas and technologies that are relevant in Canada that can scale on a global basis.
Anuj, would you like to add anything to?
Oh, it's well said. I think it's there's a comment on the chat around, I think focus is important. I think the reality in 2021 is talent has been democratized and geography is non-relevant. So that actually, in some ways, is actually a point of attraction for Canadian graduates who want to work in global environments for global companies, solve big problems, but want to do it out of Canada. I think the next step is to actually take that talent and make sure that you can create a critical mass effort and focus around key industries where Canadian companies can be global leaders, right? Just in the Valley, I think I've been very heartened by the success that Shopify has had, and it has been demonstrated over the last 36 hours as they've reported, for all intents and purposes, taking on Amazon, right? The biggest, fiercest, arguably most successful company on the planet, and the most ambitious company. And Shopify has found a way to just basically, with a North American footprint, create a very, very compelling value proposition. So I'm looking forward to the 10 new Shopifys that come out of what Shopify has been able to create. I think 5G represents a once in a generation inflection point in terms of infrastructure, as Joe said, across every industry, across every consumer use case. And the raw talent base exists. I think it's converting that into focus categories where Canada can invest in and scale globally.
The focus is the right theme. You know, we can't win a gold medal for every Olympic sport, if you take that metaphor. But if we pick a few key sports in the world of 5G, a few key verticals or key application areas, and really put the strength of Canada behind it, skills, research, investment, the ability to scale, we can create some gold medal winners like Shopify. We need another 10 Shopifys in Canada. And it's very possible 5G will create that opportunity. I agree with you, Anuj. We need the right policy environment around that to make it work. The right policy environment around intellectual property, around spectrum policy in the world of 5G, for example, around the support for companies that want to scale. I think we've done a good job of startups in Canada, but the ability to scale often requires access to financial resources and investments outside of Canada. Being open for business at scale is an important part of this future.
Thank you. I think it's very interesting, and I was going to ask you a question regarding roadblocks, but I think you have already mentioned some of the roadblocks, Joe, policies, and any other roadblocks you see?
I think the big one are the policies I just talked about. And the other one that I know is near and dear to you, Catherine, from your comments earlier, the digital divide is a roadblock. Yeah. We've got to bridge that. And you know, everyone looks to places like South Korea. South Korea has got one of the most developed 5G environments in the world. It's ubiquitous in every corner of the country. South Korea is the size of New Brunswick. It's a far easier country to cover. So digital divide and ubiquity is really important, and creating the right environment where we can just get going and get rolling and continue. Because I tell you that 6G is around the corner. There are people sitting down right now debating what 6G might look like. And therefore this race never ends. But if we're not training every day for the future, then we run the risk of being left behind. Absolutely.
So I'm glad you talk about 6G, because there was a question about that. And clearly this panel is about 5G, and 5G, as Anuj said very well, is not going to be a reality, a global reality for a long time. I mean, it's happening, but it's not going to have a penetration which is going to be very, very large till, you say 2025, something like that? Right.
Yes.
So, yes. So that's something to remember. So 6G is definitely an interesting topic as a research topic. And it's good to know that there are people who are focusing on that. But I think I would rather focus on making 5G a success and not spending too much time on 6G at this point. So my last question—
I think maybe, Catherine, on that point, it just goes to reinforce the very critical point, which is China started doing research on 6G in 2019, Korea and Japan did it in 2020, and the European Union just actually passed an effort to make sure that Europe is ahead in 6G, because they feel that they were not quite there in 5G. So I think it just reinforces the fact that there's a continuity to this in terms of the effort needed to find a way to be relevant. And other jurisdictions have recognized, as they deal with the adoption realities of 5G, that 6G is the new battlefield.
Okay, if I may differ a little bit, I think, yes, of course, 6G, we have to start thinking about 6G, but I can imagine Joe is shaking, because at some level he has to invest first in 5G. He has to get return on his investment, and this is not going to happen quickly. So yes, it's great that people start thinking about 6G and positions themselves, but at the same time, we need to make sure 5G is a success for our economy and for the future of our leadership in telecommunication. Joe?
I would agree. I mean, I agree, Catherine. The job one right now is 5G. We have to, as I say in my business, we have to ring the cash register along the way to the next round of investment. And right now, the wall of investment is quite high. It's quite high.
So I'm going, it's almost the end, and so we have 2 more minutes. So I just want first to thank all of you for your answers and for taking the time to participate in this panel. Clearly, there were a lot of questions, very sophisticated questions regarding technology, regarding power. And if I can answer that very quickly, the per bit power consumption in 5G is much better than the per bit power consumption in 4G. So, but because we are going to create to transmit many more bits at the end, we are not going to save in energy. We are just going to use energy more efficiently. So that's one. And on that note, I'm going to thank everybody and to just inform the audience that on May 20th, there will be another session of the Alumni Speaker Series. And the session will be on next generation of implants and medical devices, exploring additive manufacturing, new fabrications frontier. So another fascinating topic. And thank you to the participant. Thank you to the panelists. And I think we are just on time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.